usually say the work stuff doesn't bother me. They're coming in because they're freaking out about the shoes when they walk in. They're always yelling at their kids and don't like who they are as a dad or a husband or wife. They are withdrawing or having some intrusive thoughts, those kinds of things.
The connection's not there immediately.
You've arrived at the Mental Health Spotlight podcast with therapist Kais.
Today's podcast, the takeaway of 1, 2, 3. 1, let's learn about PTSD, its presentation, how we treat it. 2, EMDR, highly efficacious, highly effective, total neuroscience, and works great for first responders. And finally, first responders, those who love first responders, how do you get care? What do you look for to make sure you got the right provider and the right care for your mental health? Stay tuned. Corinne Santore tells us all about it in this podcast.
Corinne Santore, welcome today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. We got to talk a little bit, and we were at the coffee shop, and we were going on. And next thing I know, I'm like, this is a podcast because everything we're saying needs to be recorded because you do something very special. So I'm really glad you took time out of your very special job that you do to come see me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So that brings me to the very logical first question is, what do you do and who are you? Tell us a little bit about you.
So I am a therapist and I practice in Chesterland. I have my own practice called Speakeasy on Mayfield. And I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, which is crazy to say, but
I know, isn't it weird when you're like, how could I be doing it that long?
Yes. I am only 27, so that's weird.
And I'm 26. So I mean, for me to do it is really
weird.
Yeah. We're just fast learners.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
So, and I work primarily with first responders. I still have some other clients that I started working with years ago before I was exclusively seeing first responders that still see me. But the 80% of my caseload and only and my new clients are all first responders.
And so for people who are listening that don't really know what first responder entails, who could be a first responder?
That's a good question.
Try.
So mostly it is firefighters and paramedics. So paramedics could be in the emergency room or through a fire department or private ambulance company.
I don't think I realized all the places you could find a paramedic, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn a lot here today. Okay.
Yeah. They're the people also in the ER. Like my daughter was, we had to take her to the emergency room and they were trying to get her blood, and the nurse had to get a paramedic to actually get her blood because he was much better at it. It was kind of how good he was, but
they're like
anyway.
mini doctors.
They are
for real.
Yeah, absolutely. So police officers, ER nurses, those are the main ones.
That's what I think of when I think of that. Mm-hmm. I interviewed last week in ER the head medical director, because you don't realize that's first responder. Mm-hmm. I almost forgot when I started doing this series that people working in the emergency room are getting in immediate care situations and crisis and trauma. And so you cover anyone in that realm would fall under you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't know this question. I don't think I asked you this. Will you also see people who are family members?
I do, less so now. I have, now that my practice is growing and we have such a need, I have a few other clinicians that typically I will see the actual first responder, and a couple other folks in my practice will see the spouse.
Oh, I like that, though. So your practice is going to wrap around the family, knowing, as we do here, too, that you can't just see the person. There's usually a story beyond that. Yes.
We also have a gal who sees kiddos, too. So she'll see the kids, too, if something's going on or if that's needed. Mm-hmm.
So you started this. So you said, I've done this 20 years. I have other clients that I worked with, meaning you've done something other than first responder. When and how did you become a first responder therapist, which is very unique, by the way? I didn't know it was a thing until I interviewed someone who thought you were the most amazing person in the world.
Well, I didn't really know it was a thing either, but I really did a lot of my work on in trauma, and a lot of my early work was also in substance abuse stuff. So, so working with both those clienteles, and then through that, I got referred to do, for EMDR really, but I got referred a couple firefighters. And so I worked with them, and it's a small knit group of population. So really it's like they are my like OG people who exploded my practice and niche. Really, they told somebody who told somebody
How it works, because
It
like you
is.
said, they're brotherhood. It's a
Mhm.
brotherhood there.
Yes, for sure. And once somebody says I'm all right, then
Because you got to have cred.
yeah,
I mean,
yes,
especially
yes.
in that, talking to several people in firefighters and police officers, you don't just get to walk into their world.
No,
like you
no,
got to
no.
have a little cred on you. Before,
yeah,
and you
yes.
learn that, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned so your experience with trauma is your background in social work or in psychology or
Social work.
your social work. So the trauma is huge, and I'm like you with social work background. That naturally prepared you for it.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned EMDR.
Yes.
And I'm going to go all over the place
Yeah,
because I get
please.
so excited
Yeah.
about EMDR.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the EMDR in your practice. And then I think maybe, I don't know if, I hope we can segue it into the story of first responders, or maybe you have a story about how EMDR has worked with a first responder. I didn't ask you that ahead of time, but if you think of something, I love that idea.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
a little bit about
So-
EMDR first.
Okay. I was like, so what's the question? Okay.
It's about EMDR. Tell me about EMDR first. I'll slow down because I'm excited.
Okay. So like explain what EMDR is?
Yes, I think that would, because I don't think everyone knows what those
No.
crazy acronyms mean.
No. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which
And
is,
there's a wall there, and I love it. If I was in your chair, I'd be like banging
I
against
know.
the wall the whole
I'm
time.
very fidgety.
Well, this
in
chair
life.
forces me to sit still, and it's
Oh, okay.
freaking me out because I have wires everywhere, and like if I go to move, I have to be very careful. So I'm actually quite still for me.
Yeah. I mean, during my sessions too, my clients will laugh at me and kick off my shoes, and I like curl all up, and I'm
Please.
I'm all over the place in my so
And I want you to be that way here too.
Okay.
But back to you. You were
Yeah.
you're describing EMDR, and I had to interrupt you because it's funny.
yeah. So that's so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a bunch of therapy mumbo jumbo for the way that our brain stores trauma, something traumatic, is in the right side of the brain. And EMDR uses eye movements to get the logic side of the brain, the left side of the brain, online and connected. So it's a really fascinating therapy model, and it's quick, which is fantastic. So that's also what really helps with or is really attractive, I think, to first responders, is that it's we can get symptom relief in some symptom relief in one session, but just a handful, and we're really changing the game for them. So
It's highly efficacious too. Like
Yes.
the research really stands behind it.
yeah,
Very evidence-based, very best practice. It's kind of mind-blowing.
it is.
And I love how you described that, by the way. I don't think I ever thought, I understand a little bit about it, but I never thought about how one side of our brain has one function and the other has the other, and you're making sure they communicate. Or there's not like an error in how they communicate.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of pieces that happen where we will say, I know this intellectually, but it doesn't feel that way. And EMDR does a really great job of connecting those two pieces so that it's integrated and the neurons are firing the way they should be.
I feel like everyone I work with needs EMDR, particularly with eating disorders, because just what you said so beautifully is that they know, they're so bright, their brain knows, but yet their body and their emotions are telling a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
love that.
so much stuff is rooted in trauma. And I know that trauma is a buzzword these days, and some people are kind of put off by it. And sometimes in how it's used, I'm not loving it as well. But
Not a catchphrase for everything, is it?
It
We're not all
isn't.
traumatized.
It isn't. Well, we certainly all don't have PTSD, and that is often a misconception or a barrier, I think, for some first responders even to come in to see me, because they will think, well, I don't have like nightmares, flashbacks, like it's not. And sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't, and so they see that cinematic portrait of what PTSD is and are like, that's not what's really going on. And so and we don't see a ton of that. It's
Yeah, it's not. It's not,
different.
and it can present differently in different people.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so a lot of people you work with, though, may very well have PTSD, but the entire world of people who have experienced a trauma or crisis do not have to have PTSD. That is a manifestation, right?
Right. I mean, so if we break down even PTSD, it's like the beginning of it, post-traumatic stress is normal. If you
Great point.
experience something traumatic afterwards, you're going to have traumatic stress response.
It should be
Everybody
heightened,
does.
right? You're supposed to be like, what's still going to happen?
Yeah, and processing it and trying to make sense of it. And our brain is like a filing system. It's got to kind of put it in its place and space and time. And is it still happening? Is it still a threat? And so it doesn't have to become the disorder. And so lots of them, all of them, have experienced post-traumatic stress. They don't all have PTSD, but the compound trauma and stress is definitely heavy on the brain.
Yeah, and you make another poignant thing there is that if you're a first responder, you're going to have post-stress because you're going to experience stress at a level that you and I may not have as part of our daily job.
We certainly don't have that as part of our daily job. I mean, they see things like that most people never see in their whole lifetime, and they see it on a regular basis. And we all at some point go through trauma or stress, whether it's in the EMDR world, we call it either big T, capital T trauma, or little t trauma. So there's little t trauma that's like being embarrassed, humiliated in school, or picked on. Big T can be the severe bullying stuff, but or a traumatic loss of somebody or car accident, those things. But big T trauma is being the things that everybody would say that's traumatic. The
car accident kind of thing. Or...
Yeah, really, and severe car accidents, and your house burning down, your a family member committing suicide, or
and a lot of little T's add up to create a tough story for people too, I would think.
Oh, absolutely.
So you can have, if you just have a few little T's, we can probably process those. And again, it depends on the person.
Sure.
What is traumatizing to one person is different to somebody else, certainly.
Yes.
But you're seeing people who have their own little T's, and then they get the big T's that are part of their everyday language and experience and sensory. Wow.
And many of them also have big T's from their childhood. People are drawn to the helping profession, tend to be empaths, and have had some stuff, which is what kind of calls them to help others and be of service. So that's big T's and little T's. But yeah, then they have regular, all kinds of size T's in their job. So, and
I'm thinking of like a Sesame Street. The T's are everywhere.
Yes, they are. The T's are everywhere. That's a great visual. Yes. Oh. And so even the things that I'm like, that's a big T, even hearing it from you, they're like, oh no, that's not impactful. That's not that big of a deal. But
so they think. I find out from interviewing some people that they think that, and then later on, it's a month later, and it did have an impact. I don't think I've thought, and again, this is a series I've been starting to build into, about how who somebody is determines whether they choose that path. I talk a lot about what kind of fight or flight response did you have? How did you handle stress? But the fact that you're drawn to do that, it's a helper job, kind of like what we do. You have to be drawn to it, or you're not going to do it. It wouldn't make any sense. So then you have this already complicated story. You have this, and then they come to you. Well, first let's go back to the EMDR. So what the EMDR is quick. It meets this population's need. And do you do it with all, or does it just depend? Okay.
It completely depends. I also do traditional CBT and dialectical behavioral therapy, which is really kind of skill-based and great skills. I wish we taught DBT in schools. It should just be a class throughout, right?
My clients don't agree with you at all. I say DBT and they're like, but it is just common sense, though, a lot of it that needs to be solidified for us. Yeah.
Yes, it's emotion regulation skills.
Yes, it is. And distress tolerating, which we need a lot of.
Yes. And when using DBT skills with first responders, they're really receptive to it. So it's funny that you say that your clients cringe at it. Mine are like giving me examples of how they used it and different things.
I love it. I think because ours, it gets so shoved down their throats, and if they're in a higher level of care, they equate it with so much suffering. I think that's really what it is.
Yes.
It does work really well.
It does.
And I can't help myself. I'm like, but that's DBT. But that's DBT too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I find that first responders in general want skills to, come away from. So
Yeah. They keep using.
Yeah, we just to come in and sit in your feelings is not exactly attractive to them. So me giving them some stuff to like try this, try that, and when you do, it works. It's like that effectiveness is really helps get us traction and moving. And
For I would argue for anyone who's on a helping recovery path, like if you don't go home with something to do, you're expecting the 1 hour with us to make a change. And I mean, for some people that maybe all they need is a quick talk therapy, but most people, your clients particularly, need to go do some work.
Yeah.
So you give them those skills. It might be DBT. But if it's EMDR, they don't really have skills with that, do they? Or do they have some regulation tools they have to work on?
No. Well, what we start with is making sure they have regulation tools before we even start EMDR, because that's the foundation of it. We don't want to be opening up trauma stuff and then we send you home.
Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see you in a couple weeks.
That's why people get scared of them. Like, don't worry. It's a very system. It's like a curriculum, right?
Yeah.
You walk into it slow.
Yes, for sure. Make sure you are ready, and we have the ability to speed things up, slow things down, all that kind of stuff. So, it's a very intimate therapy model that you're walking hand in hand with people and getting a glimpse into the way their brain is storing information like nothing else I've ever been exposed to. So it's really very cool and incredible.
I'm so glad people like you are doing it, because I don't have the time right now to learn it, but I think it's fascinating.
It is.
It comes up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It comes up when I'm talking about anxiety. It came up. I have somebody who does equine therapy and she combines it with EMDR. I think people like it for what you said. It's quick, but also it's effective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people kind of they want something a little more, not aggressive, but alternative. And I think it provides that without any damage to the body. There's no threat involved. Fabulous.
Yeah, and it's also gives a good, it's not what they will often call it woo-woo. It's like there's the neurobiology of how the brain stores information, like what we know now as opposed to what we knew 20 years ago or 50 years ago about our psyche. It's like, it's actually neurobiology, and it isn't as mysterious as it has seemed, or that it's, there's something inherently wrong. In fact, it is not. It is, our brain is like the rest of our body, designed for healing and very adaptive. So it puts this stuff in place in order to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, and stores this stuff, and it can heal on its own with a little bit of help and guidance from a therapist who can do EMDR. It's like you can really get a lot of things unstuck and retrain your brain, actually neurobiologically, which is very cool.
And we know now, to your point, that the brain's there's so much neuroplasticity. We can change our brains.
Yeah.
If we're willing to do it, we don't have to be stuck in the story, the sensations, the fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, years and years and years of intense work in order for that to happen. It can be really, really quick. And so, and even EMDR has helped to understand how, like, bilateral stimulation, so moving both sides of the body back and forth, makes both sides of the brain work.
Yes.
So I will teach them too that after a messed up call, if they can go out and walk the bays or hop on the treadmill at work and get both sides of their brain working to process the call, it doesn't have to be storing. That will help it store effectively and comprehensively.
That I haven't heard, and I'm really excited about what you just said. So they have a tool using kind of the EMDR ideal. Mm-hmm. They have a tool that they can use to prevent further things from getting stuck.
Yes.
If they go and, just like you said, and do something so the brain is almost like multitasking a little bit. You're keeping it a little distracted so it does its job the right way, maybe in a way.
So basic neurobiology and psychology 101 is when I move this side of my body, it's this side of my brain that's working.
Right.
When I move this side of my body, it's this side of my brain that's working. So after you experience a traumatic event and the emotional side of your brain is lit up, as it should be,
Right.
doing bilateral stimulation and allowing your brain to go over it, because it's going to do that anyway. It's going to...
That's its job.
Yeah.
When you're sleeping later that night.
Yes. Or it's going to stuff it if that's what it's learned to do, and that's also not great. But so,
Good point.
I'm like, actually play out the call or whatever it was that happened while you are walking, jogging, walking the bays, on the treadmill. That will help it to store and both sides of your brain to come online and to kind of see it for what it was, put it in its place and time, that it's no longer still happening. And any negative beliefs about yourself that might get associated with it, it helps it all file away as it is. So, and there's lots of other tools. There's bilateral beats, playlists and stuff that in both ears will have them do those kinds of things too. If they don't want to be walking the bays, there's just lots of other things. Or once they get home, they can be doing that if they're still having a difficult time, or if it's recurring and that kind of stuff, or if their nervous system. A big part of what I'm doing too is helping them understand their nervous system too, that it's jacked up. When you walk in the door and the kid's shoes are everywhere, that tends to be like, I talk about the doorway and the shoes in people's houses a lot.
Tell me more about that. I love this. I'm assuming it's a metaphor, but also a real thing.
I mean, it's a real thing.
Because I know it gets me frustrated sometimes.
Yeah,
but not all the time.
Yes. They tend to be.
The socks, do the socks count too all over the house? Is that also?
Well, actually, I'm sure it does. Yeah, absolutely. Dishes in the sink and the shoes when you walk in the door, and like that coming off shift and getting home and the shoes being everywhere is like this nervous system jack that happens. I mean, their nervous system was jacked up before they got home. Typically,
that's like poking it a little bit, right? Like
yes, and then they're irritated, and dad or mom, whoever walks in and is mad and frustrated and just coming off shift. It's been gone for 24 hours or 48 sometimes, and or 12 for the police officers. But it's just like those things helping them to realize that it's their nervous system, that you're not just seeing the shoes for what they are. You have a wonderful family who's just living their life. And yes, could they be more orderly and put them away? They could, but they won't. And so, yeah. Your reaction to it is what is important and what's notable, and and how do we do that better?
I love that you take it into the real world with them, back into their homes, and say, okay, here's a way where this traveled with you.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited about the filing it away to the right channels later so that it can heal the right way. I just love that approach. It's so action. It's like you can go do something about this.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it takes the brain that evening and potentially even into the next evening to process anything we do in a given day.
Yeah.
That's when it does its work. So you're starting to prepare it to do that job well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I love that approach.
Yes.
And I'm fine that we're on this tangent because I think PTSD, EMDR, I don't know how we have a conversation without these and talk about first responders. It's so entrenched.
Absolutely. And even, I will, if I hear of something traumatic happening in the community that I have an idea that maybe some of my people have went on, I will send them a text and check on them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And they almost and always say, oh yeah, I'm good. We're good, but thanks for checking. But because that day is, you don't know if you're okay or not. It just happened. Your brain is still like, what just happened, and is trying to process it. So there's, that time period where it takes usually several days or even weeks before you're like, this is not settling well or filing well.
And you may not see it too, because another thing I hear is sometimes you're right back at it.
Oh yeah.
Certainly in the ER, you've got something going on here. You're getting that nervous system, the file, everything's happening. And then you're just walking into another room and then going on with your day.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a moment to be mindful, like you do, which is so great that you do that for your clients, to say, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they can at least stop and go, maybe I should be thinking about whether I'm okay or not.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's
Yes.
probably part of what you do as well, is teaching them to take those important pauses.
Absolutely.
Wow. It just fascinates me. I mean, I know I love this stuff anyways, but hearing you talk about it and really digging into the neurology of it, because even sometimes we catch ourselves as therapists saying things like, well, we're not 100% sure why it works. But you're like, no, we are. We do
For
know
this,
why it works.
we have
This
the
is
brain scans,
neuroscience.
we have the functional MRIs, we know why this works. Yeah. So, and another important part to mention too is that I would say almost all, if I'm trying to think of an example, of the first responders that I see do not come to me because of a call and them saying, okay, I'm not adjusting to this well and I need to go see somebody to talk about it. It is, and again, I'm trying to think of any examples of exceptions to this. It is almost entirely stuff's not going good at home. And, you know, in their personal life, there are major stressors or even interpersonal issues at work with administration, coworkers, stuff like that. But it's never, again, without, I can't come up with one example of a time where it's like this traumatic incident happened. And so now I'm going to go book an appointment and come see you to process the trauma. That comes through it when they're coming in because they're freaking out about the shoes when they walk in. They're always yelling at their kids and don't like who they are as a dad or a husband or wife. They are withdrawing or having some intrusive thoughts, those kinds of things. The
connection's not there immediately.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They usually
it's
say,
what they do.
Yeah, they usually say the work stuff doesn't bother me. So
Because they figured out how to put it in another department.
yeah,
And it shows
right.
up somewhere else.
Right.
And
What
you
I help
have to
people
feel
see.
that way.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying you kind of have to be able to do that, at least in
Absolutely.
the daytime.
Absolutely. And what I try to help people see is that you're a whole person. So it all, like the work I do can't not have an impact on me also. You know, it's like learning how to file it away and make it not hijack my nervous system at home is the work, but I still have to do that. And I don't do what they do. So
Right. That's a really, and even the type of work we do, there are social workers that are working in a much more intense environment, high acuity, and we don't have that, and we still have to process and leave it in its place.
yeah.
So you mentioned that sometimes people will come to you. How do people first responders? I guess how do they get identified? What are some examples you have of how somebody did get to you, or is it because the family members suggest it? Is it something that their firefighter team has said, "Hey, go talk to Corinne"? How do they get help?
So they come a few different ways, but I would say the majority of it, either if their spouse is saying you need to go talk to somebody, or
Somebody in their world is like, "This isn't okay anymore."
Yeah. Really what I see the most happening now is one person on a department will be vulnerable enough to say that they come to see me and it's went okay, and it's often met with kind of crickets or no response at all, but
You go.
yeah, okay.
Until they think later, boy, he's better. This person or she's better.
Oh, yeah, but once and usually they'll say that they did tell me, they will come in and tell me that they had mentioned it and even how that reaction went, which they're usually a little disappointed with it. But almost every single time in the next few weeks, I have multiple people from that department that says, so-and-so mentioned that they come. And so I think it might be time for me to come in too. And usually they don't initially want anybody to know that they're coming to, but it's funny. It's like, as soon as I have a new person in a department and then they mention it, it's that department starts rolling. So.
And you're leaning a little bit into the culture of firefighters. I shouldn't say
And police
culture
too.
of first responders. And this is the theme that's across the boards, that sometimes it's a silent thing. It's not really talked about. We're the tough people. We're the ones that are out there helping. And so if somebody is willing to come in and help break that chain or whatever you want to call that, that tendency, then people can get help. But it's not really a standard to talk about mental health in these settings. Are you finding that?
Well,
I find it occasionally when people I'm talking to.
yeah, for sure. It's definitely changing. There's a push both in police and fire side to be addressing mental health and talking about it, which is helping. From when I
Do you
really
see that?
started working with this population 10 years ago, when I left the practice I was working at previously and started my own practice, I had a back door. I would sneak people out the back door, and I haven't had to do that in 6 years or so.
I have to laugh because that's where it was, though.
Yes.
They didn't want people to know that they were
Yes.
getting help for something that anyone in this line of work would need help with.
It should. I mean, it should
Mind-blowing to
be
me.
yes.
Mind-blowing
It
that they're
should just be that this is
mandatory?
part of like and mandatory. Of course, they will all buck at. But I in my dream world, when I'm either dead or retire, whichever one happens first. But I
we
hope
don't retire in this line of work.
I know. I really can't imagine actually entirely retiring. But I hope that the culture just is, this is just what we do. And here's who I see, here's who he sees. And it's not where we're making you do it, but you just can't do this work and expect to not have it bubble over into other areas. And so,
and maybe preventive, Corinne, too.
Yeah.
Where, and I am hearing that in some of the folks I've talked to is let's put things in place ahead of time.
yeah.
So we're already learning regulation. We're already understanding the nervous system.
In
so you know
paramedic
what's
school,
coming.
in fire school, let's
Thank
be
you.
talking about this. Yeah.
And it's getting there, but
Yeah.
we have a ways to go.
Yeah, for sure. But there is definitely a movement, which is great. And
It is. That's why we're here. We want to build that. Make it
yeah,
louder.
yeah.
So for people though, let's say that because you have this beautiful niche and you working here in our area, for somebody that's a first responder listening or a family member, how would they start even the process if they don't know someone like you and they haven't heard about someone like you? Do they just start the normal process of finding someone, and how do they find the right person? I think what I'm really trying to ask is how do they know they get someone like you? What should they be asking?
Well,
Because not everyone is fit to I shouldn't say fit. Not everyone is going to specialize in this, and I feel like it
Right.
matters to some extent.
to some extent, it does. I think it does matter. I do think that as much as they may minimize the trauma impact, that it is important to find a trauma-informed clinician. So
Yeah, right. That's a given to me almost. Like if you
yeah.
don't have trauma experience, you probably shouldn't be working.
population,
Yeah.
yes. And the downside of our population or our profession, I'm sorry, that you may find this too, and I hate to talk badly at all about our profession, but is people often overstate their qualifications or their experience. So they've worked with one first responder and they will say that they're experienced with it. So it's really tough to know unless you know that.
You can ask that question though, can't
You
you?
can, and how
people have you
many?
treated?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I would expect working in disordered eating, this is a specialty. You don't put it down unless you really have some serious experience with it because you can do harm.
Yeah.
And I would think in your area, you could do harm if you don't understand the traumatic piece.
The
Or at
trauma
least
for sure. Yeah.
You can at least step them backwards, and that would not be okay.
Yes. And
So check for
you'll
trauma.
get the vibe. I think what I've heard a lot from people who have went and tried a different clinician before they came to me, their frustration was they spent the first several sessions explaining the job or their schedule or so it, if you find yourself doing that, I wouldn't want to spend my first few sessions having to educate the clinicians.
Just to know about the circadian rhythm thing, to understand
Yeah.
that they're shift workers. Like these are things that you know because it's just part of working with them. So someone who has experience, someone who understands and has a trauma-informed approach or has trauma experience, EMDR, is that something that somebody could outsource? Meaning you would be their therapist. Let's say you didn't do EMDR, but you do first responder. Can they outsource just a piece of this, or does that get a little scary too?
I have done it before. I've done it for other clinicians. It's trickier. It's
You're
it's
kinda like,
tricky.
no, Kais, no.
Well,
emotion."
no. What's tricky also about it too is that like it is a very intimate modality. So it's then even professionally, right? So then the expectation is we just do the EMDR and I send you back.
Yeah.
It's people then don't, you've just built this very intimate connection because we're getting into stuff that you wouldn't intellectually be just mentioning in cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like deeper stuff. So it's just harder to then be like, okay, now go back, and it just doesn't.
And they're already in a vulnerable position.
Yes,
They're
yeah.
already probably not brought up in the culture of doing this. So
Yeah.
that's a really great point.
So I just make sure to talk to referring therapists about that possibility that it's like, you know, as much as I want to make this clean and neat and send them right back for professional courtesy and all of that, but it
may not.
It may not happen like that. And this may be that you're just referring them to me. But
Exactly. And I'm always, because I don't do EMDR, so when they go somewhere else, I'm like, this might feel better for you and it might feel different. And I want you to be really open-minded, because who doesn't love a second set of eyes too?
Absolutely.
So for me, it's just someone else kind of looking.
Well, the other important part I would say to that, as far as finding the person, is what we do know is that 80% of the effectiveness that people report in therapy is based on the relationship you have with your therapist. 20% is on the garbage we actually know. So
Thank God, because I'm really bad sometimes at my, in my acronyms and my,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, it's a very relational science. So if you are meeting with somebody and you go once, twice, a handful of times, and you're like, I'm just not really that connected.
Right.
It's time to move on. I mean, and that's what I do looking for my own therapist, is like, if
absolutely.
we don't have a good, more than what they know, more than the modalities or anything else, it's like, and I say that to people when they come to me, is if it is personal, but it's also not personal. If we don't have a good connection, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Find somebody else.
I always tell them, you're auditioning. This is my audition with you.
Yeah.
And you'll let me know if I fit and if it feels safe and good for you.
Yeah.
I never assume that it's going to fit, because two people are unique.
Yeah, and you aren't for everyone. I'm not for everyone.
I think I am. No, I know. Are you sure? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, we couldn't be. That would belie the value of the unique humans that we work with. So
right.
I love that you're stressing that, because I think sometimes people feel trapped that, no, that's who I'm with and I have to stay with them. And no, you make sure you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be going potentially, especially in your case, to some very vulnerable places.
Mm-hmm.
And you want that person to feel comfortable with you.
Yeah, and after a little while, if you aren't feeling like you can say some of the vulnerable things, it's either like, do you need to get more vulnerable, or is it that this isn't a great fit and you need to find someone else?
Yeah. How long do people stay with you? You mentioned EMDR can be very fast and it can be effective, but do you kind of just stay along as like a PRN? Like if they need things, do you find that they want to keep you for a while, I would think? Because the job doesn't go away.
It doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely varying. You know, I have people who I've been seeing for years and years, and at different.
And you know who you are.
Yeah.
We have a shared somebody.
Yes. And that is a perfect example of somebody who's,
never going anywhere.
Well,
He's staying with you forever.
I know. Like it or not, I'm stuck with him.
Right.
No, but it will come more frequently when stuff is going on, and then get, and then we work through the things, and then I may not see the person for months or years.
Right.
So, and then I have people who were, we touch base once a month, every 6 weeks, but they will also text or call if something, big call came in, because we've done it before and they know how it works. So it's like, I might as well, you got to kind of do it before you realize, this is one. Usually like kid calls and stuff will stick with people. So if they go on one, that will be one that if we've done some EMDR in the past and another one comes up, they're like, I'm not even going to deal with figuring out whether or not it's going to get stuck. I'm just going to do a session of it. And then when it's a recent call like that, typically one reprocessing session is
because they've done a lot of the work, right? You're
and it's fresh, and it's not. It doesn't get enmeshed with other things, which is what our brain tends to do. So,
and I love that so much. I want to keep highlighting what you just said there. It's not always about what's happening; it's what we do with it. It's our narrative part. And so, when you learn to recognize it, I suspect your clients do much better each time there's a trauma in there.
Mm-hmm.
I also am hearing here, you almost have a role a little bit coach-like, and just a bit, because you are very accessible. And we don't all choose to be accessible therapists. I'm like you. I do like my clients to be able to reach me within my boundaries. But you kind of, I guess, sort of have to be, because you're dealing with people whose crises are completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
You expect them. You know they're going to happen. It's not like
Yes.
someone you hope doesn't have another trauma.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, this is the best population ever to work with. I'm very honored and privileged every day of my caseload and the people I work with. So when it is the stuff that comes up, it's just I couldn't imagine not being accessible to be serving them after, traumatic incidents. So
I think it's important. I really do, especially with that population. I love that you do that. And as I've been interviewing firefighters and police officers and police chiefs, and I'm just, they're just so interesting too. I'm always fascinated that they are able to suppress fight or flight long enough to do what they do. It amazes me the skill set you need to walk into that room or that ER room and to be able to maintain composure and lead a team. And wow, it's mind blowing. So they're very, very amazing humans that you work with.
absolutely.
You mentioned some of the obstacles of working with them, though, and one of them was the culture sometimes does not lend itself to the open language. Are there any other things that, if this is for, I guess, somebody who is or wants to work with this population too, what gets in the way? And of course, for people wanting help, are there other obstacles that are maybe not the same for other people getting therapy?
That's a good
I mean, I
question.
know we
don't
mentioned schedule, because
Yeah.
their schedules are different. So for you as their clinician, you have to have different hours too, don't you? Because again, shift work.
Yeah. So I do. And it depends what group, like fire in our area tend to be 24 on, 48 off. And police are mostly all moving to 12-hour shifts. Some are still on 8 or 10.
Well, so there are windows where you could see them at different times. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
and they're
So
not living their lives.
yeah, I mean, it is also the beautiful upside of this population, and it's my selfish part of it, is that their schedules are they're not 9 to 5, so they have to have a 6 o'clock. Like, I have a teacher, for example, that I've seen for years and years, and she's one of my most difficult to schedule because of her hours.
Yeah,
Yes.
like a student, you have to see them after school.
Yes, and teachers are not even after school. It's like she's got still a couple hours of work after school to do, so it's 5, 6 o'clock. But
Exactly.
yeah, so their days, they have days off and during the week and all that kind of stuff. So that makes it easier for scheduling. So
Yeah, and it ranges. Pardon me. So you do get a little variety in that, which is probably not. So mainly, it sounds like it's more just kind of the culture, and for first responders, it's recognizing it's okay to get help. I think that's more an internal thing, like we've already discussed.
So yeah, I just to speak on that. It used to be if people had a hard time with calls or integrating work and home, the message they received, especially from older, more senior guys, was that then this isn't the career for them. So it's basically like, so you can't say
Wow.
it, basically, like,
Scary to hear that,
very. So
because you're a human. How dare you have human emotion and that
Yes.
brain you discussed? How dare you?
yes. Well, and also I've heard from many people who have went to therapists before, who they will go to a therapist who says, after they're talking about the difficulties, they should find a new profession. What about finding a new job? And it's like, get out of here with that. I mean,
And this
can you
is their
imagine?
passion.
It's and you've been doing it for how long? And can you imagine going to a therapist who says maybe you should not be a therapist?
Right.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's not an effective way to approach some of the challenges.
Yeah. I mean, if they're thinking about that, fine. But and some are, but yeah, it's not.
I think you would have to go down a very, very long journey of trying a lot of things to decide something like that. That's that part of visceral to who you are.
Yeah.
And some people might decide that, but you don't just decide it because you're having emotional. You need some emotional space, or you need therapy.
Yes.
It's changing. You
Yes,
said
it's changing. It is.
How does somebody know then, and how do you know when this format, the EMDR, the therapy, is not enough? Because when I interviewed our shared person, they had gone into a higher level of care. How does that affect you? Not affect you, but how do you know when someone needs that? And do you do that sort of referring, or what happens?
Yeah, there are times, like a number one discussion point will be when there is suicidal ideation. So that is for me one of those things. And the level of distress that is impacting their work or home life. So I will start the conversation, and I take the approach of I'm working with you. I mean, we are mandated reporters. If someone says they're planning to hurt themselves or someone else, we have
safe.
stuff that we have to keep them safe. But working with this population, they know that they are also mandated reporters. So they
Great
also
point.
don't generally come and say, "This is my plan. This is what I'm going to
But
do."
don't tell anybody. Right.
Yeah, I mean, they know what I have to do if they tell me, and they know what they say and how they say it is what I would have to do. So I do give them the space and place to talk about suicidal thoughts, because just because you are having thoughts does not mean you have a plan, does not mean you need necessarily inpatient, does not mean, a lot of talking through it with somebody who's not having that big reaction of, oh, now we got to go put you in inpatient, allows people to talk through it and work through it without that higher level of care. But if we've tried some medication and the interventions, and usually then I will get people in a couple times a week, or do my very best to try to do that. And then I make it a conversation with them. And
So you give the extra levels, but if those aren't enough, then we might need that insular environment of being somewhere for.
yeah. And I start like planting the seed for them to think about it. It's not I'm just brought this up right now and I'm going today.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
That concept of having to go away, having to leave your job, but occasionally it might happen. And I've
Yes.
heard that there are places.
Yes.
I know the Center of Excellence does just for firefighters.
Yes.
So there's a recognition that this might be necessary.
Yes. And I have a retired police officer that I also partner with, who does some like peer support stuff, who also has a lot of resources on the police officer side. There are different inpatient facilities throughout the country, and he has connections and resources and nonprofits that help pay for transportation and that kind of stuff. And he is also helps when there's the concern of the police chief not understanding, or the superiors and stuff. So he will do kind
Like
of that
advocate?
bridge, of
Mhm.
like, this is what's going on if necessary. So there are options. Yeah, I've never had anybody really willing or open to going to the local hospitals where they would take a suicidal patient and through the ED or directly to the hospital and then be admitted in. It's like, I don't blame them. I would be very resistant to that too. It's like, we
They
make
need a
sure,
different-
we find a place where it is going to be conducive and not traumatizing.
Especially if you do that for a living and you're the
Yes.
one who is helping people to get to that level of help, it would probably be very I don't know what the word is, incongruent in a way to be in that yourself.
Yeah.
And you know too much and you know people. And
Mhm.
so I'm glad
And then
that-
you're going to come back to work and bring somebody else next week when you were just, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we have options that are higher. And I'll put all this in the show notes, stuff that's out there that we know of. Any other resources you can think that are more global, that are out there for anyone in this area that is that maybe isn't just about therapy? Do you know of any organizations or?
I've heard wonderful things about a nonprofit in the Columbus area called Bridges, which does weekend retreats. I want to call
So
them,
many
but
places use that name, by the way.
yeah,
Isn't it funny?
retreats or
Oh,
bridges,
bridges, yeah.
bridges,
Or
bridges.
retreats.
Yeah. or
And you
retreats.
said this one's in Columbus, Ohio.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
And they usually take the first responder and their spouse, if they have a spouse, both go and learn different kind of things. So it's kind of integrated. And I've only heard incredible things about it from people who have went.
You said it's just a weekend, just a
Yeah,
short
I think it's
stint.
like Friday through Sunday. Yeah.
like a retreat.
Yes.
Do a little yoga, do a little talking.
Yes.
Oh, I love
yes.
it.
Yeah.
Because these things, I'm going to guess, if we were to have this conversation down the road, I think there's going to be more. I think we'll have more things where we're like, oh, there's this and this and this. I did find what I've discovered in my work, at least doing this, is that the firefighters population community tends to have the most.
Yeah.
They, for whatever reason, they seem to be the most fit for, and maybe because it's the paramedic and that side, they seem to have the most preventive and resources. So
Yeah,
they're learning something.
The International Association of Firefighters, the IAFF, is doing a really great job in making this a priority. And they are even doing trainings for clinicians to be able to be specializing in this.
Oh,
So
I'm glad you said that, because for someone out there thinking, I really want to work with this population, and Corinne has 20 years. How do I get that? I know some of it is being mentored by somebody who does this. I'm
Yes.
sure you have some mentees that learn through you, but to go somewhere and get a specialization training.
yeah, so
Ooh.
they and you'll do what they call fire ops. So they put you in the fire gear, and they do a mock fire thing. You go on an
Oh my
EMS
God.
call, and
Like
so
empathy to actually know what.
yeah,
the heck
what's
is
happening. Yes, and then actual firefighters who are not clinicians at all help teach the training. So, and then we
Ooh.
they have
The what not to say, what not to do, kind of
Yeah.
like you said. Please don't
Yeah.
ask these dumb questions.
yes. So once you've went through that, we have a monthly clinician consultation group that is for people throughout the country and Canada too. Some folks are in Canada, and there is a firefighter in all of our consultation groups who.
So you're doing this currently. You
I
said
am
we.
currently, yes, I
Of
am
course you
currently
are,
doing this.
right? I was going to ask, are you
Yeah.
doing this? 'Cause
Yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds-
Yeah, you should do this.
I wanted.
yeah.
I was going to suggest you do it, but that's
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But
But
I
having
interrupted you. There's
No, that's okay.
across the country consultations of people.
yes, we meet and from all over people from all over the country log in, and and they have at least a firefighter in there so that we can be bouncing things off, and like, how does this work? And it's different throughout the country. The logistics of their unions and their stuff like that. So they try to help us to understand the pieces that we don't know because we're clinicians. So
What I so love about this is, I think, again, I work in a lot with disordered eating and anxiety and all that. But if we had these conversations, and then we had someone each time in there giving us just not the client, someone just telling us the gospel while we're doing it, how helpful would that be?
it was so helpful.
That might be out there. I apologize for people who know there probably is something like that, but I want to create it within my practice, because that's super smart.
Yeah.
I mean, I ask my clients all the time, but then they're a client.
Right.
Like, they might be a little filtered in what they say.
Yeah.
No, my clients aren't, but some
Yeah.
might be. I want to do that. I want to just go on a call and understand what they've been through, because I would have no idea what the energy's like when a bell goes off, or you're going down the street, or you walk into a house. You don't know what to expect. Fascinating. Is there a piece of advice that you have for a first responder out there who's struggling? Is there something, maybe highlighting something you've already said, or something you would tell them to offer them hope or guide them a little bit?
The number one thing is that you don't have to live this way, and that there is lots of things that we can do to improve your quality of life, and relatively quickly. I mean, so that finding somebody that you can talk to, and that knows how to help pull you out, because we do know how to do that. It's not.
It works. We're not
Yes.
pretending. This stuff works.
Yeah, it does.
You work. I'm sure your people get better and get their quality of life back.
Yeah. You don't have to live this way, for sure. And the suicide in first responder population is 6 times the average population, and
6 times. you
6
said?
times, yes. And I hope that by the time I am dead or retire, that is not
You're
the
not dead
case.
and retired.
Yeah.
You're leaving a legacy, aren't
yes,
you?
Yes, for sure.
But that's,
yes,
that's a big
that we're at
number.
least to the gen pop of people, like the regular percentages is what I would ideally like to see. That it's not 6 times. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And that puts them in a marginalized, in a vulnerable population, for sure, which is why I think this conversation is so important.
Yeah.
We take them for granted.
Yeah.
They're the big, tough people that go out and keep us all safe and do this imperative and integral job. And we forget. People like myself wouldn't even know what they go through. And it's taken for granted a little bit.
Absolutely. And to be drawn to this profession, for the most part, you have to be an empath.
Right.
So, you're
You're going to feel.
You're going to feel the feels. Yes. Yeah.
Ugh. Or you're going to learn how not to feel.
Yeah.
And then
right.
that affects your home life to what you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that cycle. But you're saying it doesn't have to be. We can treat it. We can.
Yes, yes. And so much of things in life that, again, I hope is different by the time I'm, to the end of my dead or retired, yes, to the end of my career, is that even just the skills of emotion regulation is taught. We're not taught this. We aren't taught even how to communicate or communicate well in our families of
70s
origin.
and 80s kids, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, no, exactly.
What?
And
Shut up.
let alone identify a feeling, let alone, how do you regulate and how do you work through this stuff? How does trauma store in your brain? This is science that we know now. And so, again, you don't have to live this way. You can, the skills and the tools are there. You have to learn them, and to expect you to just know them is silly, because
we don't know.
Yeah.
And we're not equipped for that. Very few people have that training as a child in their world. Some people might. That's great. But even we as parents know how hard it is to embolden this to your children. And we know what we're doing.
Yes, yes.
So we want the global stroke to be, let's all talk about this more and learn these skills, but then let's also focus in on this population that needs it so much so.
Yes. And because you don't know this stuff, or because you are struggling regulating, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's like, this is not a weakness. It's just like, if you were not feeling well, you'd go to your doctor. And
you wouldn't feel shame. You'd be like, I have a cold.
Right.
I think that's a really important part of this, is the weakness thing. Mm-hmm. Mental health for so many years was looked at as weakness. And of course it can help you. It's weak when it's untreated. Right. It does weaken you. Mm-hmm. It tears you down. Yeah. But it's not because you're weak. It's because you're not treating it.
Right.
If I have a migraine every single day of my life, it's going to do something. Mm-hmm. So
definitely lessen your quality of life when there's somebody out there that knows how to treat migraines.
And then if I saw shoes and I had a migraine, I'd probably be really mad.
Yeah.
I love that you said the shoes. I walk in my house sometimes like, if I could just, one of my kids' chores is to organize the shoes, because I feel like there's something about that.
Yes.
But to your point, even when you walk into that, you can learn to walk in and change your perspective, reset yourself, do the things to not be, affected by that. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
But you can still be affected. Maybe not throw shoes or whatever we do. Is there a word to describe your journey? You've had a beautiful journey helping people, and now, and recently, not recently, for a long time too, helping the first responder population. Is there a word for this experience you've had doing this?
It's been a privilege. Yeah, a privilege for sure. It's such an honor. Yeah. This is honestly,
they've accepted you into their lair.
They have. And it's the greatest group of people. I mean,
yes, I'm jealous.
I
have great people too, but your people are great too.
Yeah, I'm like, you should be. Yeah. When I interview clinicians to join the practice, and we talk about working with first responders and if they're trauma informed, I'm like, I can teach you the first responder part of it. And, it shocks me that there are lots of clinicians that are like, oh no, I don't want to work with that population. And I'm like, but they're the best. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. And watching people who are in a culture and potentially have lived tight, to watch them open up, that's so beautiful. To watch their lives change. I'm sure you have seen so many recovery stories that are so inspiring.
Yes, absolutely. It's like there are those moments that are the very best moments of the day where I'm like, so good.
We do it.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah.
We know. It may be ugly along the way, but you're going to get there. You'll find your recovery. Love it. Anything that you didn't get to say that we didn't share in this beautiful conversation today before we close out and let you go on to help people?
I don't think so.
I was looking at my notes. I'm like, I think we captured everything.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was a great conversation. I want to build on it again. I have a feeling you need to come back and talk about something else, because this is. I think we could probably build books on this topic. But I really appreciate your time with this and educating the world, hopefully, and first responders on how to get help.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Health Spotlight podcast, helping you hold hope on your recovery path.